Sarah Chen stood at the airlock of the Galactic Coalition warship Unyielding Dawn clutching her worn toolkit in one hand and her assignment papers in the other. The massive ship would be her home for the next year, assuming she survived the integration program. She was the first human engineer ever assigned to an Arthaxian vessel, and from what she'd heard, the 8-foot-tall insectoid warriors weren't exactly thrilled about it. Engineer Chen. A young human ensign approached her, looking nervous. "I'm supposed to show you to your quarters, but there's been a situation." Sarah sighed. She'd been on board for less than 5 minutes, and already something had gone wrong. What kind of situation? Well, there's been a mix-up with the room assignments, or maybe not a mix-up exactly. The ensign's voice trailed off as they walked through the curved corridors. "You see, you've been assigned to share quarters with Commander Krithak." Sarah stopped walking. Krithak. The Krithak. The one who publicly spoke against human integration in the fleet. The ensign nodded quickly. "That's the one. Captain's orders, apparently." They reached a door marked with both human and Arthaxian script. Sarah took a deep breath and pressed her palm to the scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a spacious cabin divided into 2 distinct halves. The left side was perfectly organized, with Arthaxian weapons mounted on the walls and a meditation mat laid out in precise alignment with the room's angles. The right side was empty, waiting for her belongings. And there, standing in the center of the room like a statue, was Commander Krithak. His chitinous armor gleamed under the cabin lights, and all 4 of his arms were clasped behind his back in a formal pose. His antennae twitched once when he saw her, the only indication that he acknowledged her presence. "Engineer Chen," he said, his translator making his clicks and chirps into crisp, cold English. "I trust you understand this arrangement is temporary until proper accommodations can be found." Sarah set her toolkit down with a deliberate thunk. "Actually, Commander, according to my papers, this is a permanent assignment." She held up the documents. "Direct orders from Coalition Command." Krithak's antennae went rigid. "Impossible. This violates at least 7 Arthaxian protocols regarding living quarters." "And how many of those protocols were written before the Coalition existed?" Sarah asked, starting to unpack her tools. "Sometimes rules need to be updated." "Rules exist for a reason, Engineer. They prevent chaos. They maintain order." Krithak watched as she began setting up her workstation. "What are you doing?" "Setting up my diagnostic station. I have to monitor engine efficiency readings during my off hours." She pulled out a tangle of cables. "Don't worry, I'll keep my chaos contained to my side." Krithak's mandibles clicked in what Sarah assumed was disapproval. Engineering can be conducted in engineering. Quarters are for rest and meditation. Before Sarah could reply, the ship's alert system blared to life. Red lights pulsed along the corridors outside their door. Unidentified vessels detected on long-range scanners. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Krithak moved with surprising speed, grabbing his ceremonial battle armor. Sarah reached for her emergency repair kit. They reached the door at the same moment, both freezing awkwardly in the doorway. After a tense second, Krithak stepped back, mandibles tight. "Engineer Chen," he said stiffly. "After you. I suspect we'll both be needed if those vessels prove hostile." Sarah nodded and hurried through the door. As she headed toward engineering, she couldn't help but smile. Maybe there was hope for this arrangement after all. Her optimism lasted exactly 3 seconds, until Krithak called after her. "And when we return, we will discuss the proper protocol for cable management in shared living spaces." The unknown vessels turned out to be exactly what everyone feared: pirates. 3 sleek black ships emerged from the darkness of space, their weapons already charged and ready. The Unyielding Dawn's corridors echoed with the sound of running feet as crew members rushed to their stations. Sarah arrived at engineering just as the first blast hit. The ship's shields held, but the impact made the deck plates vibrate under her feet. She quickly took her position at the main console, fingers flying over the controls. "Status report," barked Chief Engineer Vixtal, their compound eyes reflecting the flashing red alert lights. "Shield harmonics are fluctuating," Sarah reported, frowning at her readings. "There's something odd about those pirate weapons." Up on the bridge, Krithak stood at his tactical station, mandibles clicking as he prepared the traditional Arthaxian battle response. Loading torpedo tubes 1 through 4. Preparing standard attack pattern Delta 7. The pirates struck again. This time, Sarah noticed something in the shield readings that made her blood run cold. "Engineering to bridge," she called over the comm. "Those pirates are using modulated energy weapons. They're trying to match our shield frequency." "Impossible," Krithak responded. "Our shield frequencies are classified coalition technology." Another hit rocked the ship. The shields dropped to 60%. "Well, they'd got them," Sarah shot back. "And if we don't do something different, they'll be through our shields in 3 more hits." Krithak's voice was stern. "We will follow standard protocol. Prepare countermeasures according to section." "We don't have time for protocol," Sarah interrupted. She turned to Chief Vixtal. "Chief, if we reverse the shield polarity and randomly fluctuate the frequencies we cooled, that would violate 17 safety protocols." Vixtal clicked. "The procedure is untested." The pirates fired again. Shields at 40%. Sarah made a decision. Her fingers moved across her console before anyone could stop her. "I'm doing it anyway. Better court-martialed than dead." Krithak's voice cut through the comm. "Engineer Chen, stand down immediately. You will follow." The rest of his words were drowned out by another hit, but this time something different happened. The pirates' energy weapons bounced off the modified shields, reflecting back at their own ships. One of the pirate vessels took heavy damage from its own blast. "It's working," Sarah called out. "Their weapons are useless against the random frequencies. Bridge, target the damaged ship while they're confused." There was a moment of tense silence before Krithak responded. "Firing." His voice was cold but professional. The Unyielding Dawn's torpedoes struck true, destroying one pirate ship. The other 2 quickly retreated, disappearing into the darkness of space as quickly as they had appeared. In the aftermath, Sarah stood at attention in the ship's conference room, facing both Krithak and Chief Vixtal. She expected to be reprimanded, maybe even removed from the ship. "Your actions were reckless, dangerous, and completely against protocol," Krithak stated, his antennae rigid with disapproval. "You could have destroyed our shields entirely." "But she didn't," Chief Vixtal interrupted. "In fact, her solution was effective." Krithak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Sarah was starting to recognize as frustration. "Effective does not mean correct. There are procedures. Procedures that would have gotten us all killed," Sarah said quietly. "Sometimes you have to trust your instincts." "Arthaxians do not operate on instinct," Krithak responded. "We operate on thousands of years of tested military doctrine." Sarah gathered her courage. "Maybe that's why the pirates knew exactly what you would do. They counted on you following those doctrines." The room fell silent. Finally, Krithak spoke. "You will document your shield modification procedure properly, with all calculations and risk assessments." He turned to leave, then added, "And Engineer Chen, next time, warn me before you improvise." Sarah hid her smile until she was back in their quarters. It wasn't exactly approval, but it was a start. Then she saw the state of her cables after the battle, sprawled across her workspace like angry snakes. Krithak was going to have a fit. Sarah couldn't sleep. Again. The ship's night cycle was in full effect, with dimmed lights and skeleton crews manning essential stations. She sat at her workstation, analyzing data from recent equipment failures that didn't make any sense. "You are awake." Again. Krithak's voice came from his side of the room, making her jump. "So are you," she pointed out, turning to see the Arthaxian warrior sitting cross-legged on his meditation mat. All four of his arms were perfectly still, but his antennae twitched with alertness. I require only 4 hours of rest. It is normal for my species to wake before dawn. He tilted his head. You, however, should be sleeping. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. Can't. Too many weird things happening lately. Did you know the backup life support system failed 3 times this week? And there's no clear reason why. Krithak rose smoothly to his feet. The primary weapons targeting array also malfunctioned during yesterday's training exercise. Most unusual. Wait. Sarah pulled up more data on her screen. When exactly did that happen? 300 hours. That's the same time the cargo bay doors sealed themselves shut 2 days ago. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, and when the mess hall replicators started producing nothing but Centaurian slug juice, Krithak moved to stand behind her chair, looking at the data. His presence would have made her nervous a week ago, but she was getting used to him. All malfunctions occurred during night shift, he observed. When minimal crew is around, Sarah added. Someone's messing with the ship's systems. Or something. Krithak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Show me the maintenance logs for those areas. Sarah pulled them up, and they both leaned in to study the records. Look at this, she pointed. Microscopic damage to the circuitry in every case, like something's been chewing on the wires. But all internal scans show no unauthorized life forms aboard. Sarah chewed her lip, thinking. Unless they're too small to detect. She grabbed her toolkit. I've got a modified scanner that might help. Want to do some late-night investigating. Krithak's antennae perked up in what Sarah now recognized as interest. It would be against protocol to conduct unauthorized searches during night shift. True. Sarah stood up. But it would also be against protocol to ignore potential security threats. A valid point. Krithak moved to collect his personal scanner. We will start with the life support systems. They made an odd pair walking through the quiet corridors, the tall Arthaxian warrior and the shorter human engineer, but they developed a smooth working rhythm over the past weeks. Krithak watched for any crew members who might question their presence, while Sarah scanned the walls and access panels. Near the auxiliary control room, her scanner beeped. Got something, she whispered, pulling off an access panel. Krithak provided light from his bioluminescent antennae, a feature Sarah hadn't known about until now. Inside the panel, something tiny glinted. Sarah adjusted her scanner's magnification. Oh hell, she breathed. Krithak, look at this. They're nanobots, thousands of them. The microscopic machines were systematically taking apart the ship's circuitry, piece by tiny piece. This is beyond simple sabotage, Krithak said grimly. These are military-grade cybernetic infiltrators. Can you tell whose they are? No, but they are too sophisticated for pirates. He straightened up. We must alert the captain. Wait. Sarah grabbed his arm, something she wouldn't have dared do 2 weeks ago. If these really are military-grade, someone high up had to be involved in getting them aboard. We need to be careful who we tell. Krithak was silent for a moment. Finally, he said, you are suggesting we conduct our own investigation. Against protocol. Without authorization. Yes. Sarah managed a tired smile. Unless you're not up for a little human-style improvisation. Krithak's mandibles clicked in what she was learning to recognize as amusement. I will add it to the growing list of protocols you have convinced me to break. He checked his scanner. The next maintenance junction is this way. Try to keep up, engineer. Sarah grinned and followed him into the darkness. They had a long night ahead of them. 3 days after discovering the nanobots, Sarah sat cross-legged on Krithak's meditation mat, trying not to fidget. It felt wrong to sit still for so long, but Krithak had insisted. Your human tendency to constantly move wastes energy, he said, standing over her with all 4 arms clasped behind his back. To track our enemies, you must learn focus. I focus just fine when I'm working. Sarah protested, but she closed her eyes anyway. They'd been tracking the nanobot infections across the ship each night, and she was exhausted. Different kind of focus, Krithak clicked. Arthaxian warriors learned to extend their senses. Listen to the ship. Sarah almost laughed, but something in his tone stopped her. Instead, she listened. Gradually, she began to notice things. The subtle hum of the engines, tiny vibrations in the deck plates, the soft whisper of air through the vents. Good, Krithak said quietly. Now, remember these patterns. Any change could mean. The nanobots. Sarah's eyes snapped open. They change the ship's baseline sounds when they're working. Krithak's antennae twitched with approval. Precisely. We have been searching with our eyes. Now we will use all our senses. Sarah stood up, excited. That's why they work at night. Fewer crew means fewer vibrations to mask their movements. She hurried to her workstation. I can modify our scanners to detect variations in the ship's normal sound patterns. Krithak watched as she worked, his head tilted curiously. You modify equipment with remarkable speed. How do you know it will function correctly? I don't always know, Sarah admitted, pulling apart a scanner. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and learn from mistakes. Here, help me with this. She showed him how to recalibrate the scanner sensors, explaining each step. To her surprise, Krithak asked thoughtful questions about the process. You know, she said, for someone who loves protocols, you're pretty good at adaptation. And for someone who claims to dislike meditation, you learned quickly. Krithak's mandibles clicked in what Sarah now knew was his version of a smile. Perhaps we both had incorrect assumptions. Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah's modified scanner beeping softly. They both looked at the display. Large concentration of nanobots, Sarah whispered. They're active right now, 2 decks down. The weapons control room. Krithak checked his personal scanner. Night shift changes in 10 minutes. We have a window. They moved through the ship's corridors silently, a trick Krithak had taught her. At the weapons control room, Sarah pressed her ear to the door, using her newfound awareness of the ship's sounds. Someone's in there, she breathed. Human, based on the footsteps. Krithak's antennae twitched forward. Arthaxian as well. I can sense their bioelectrical field. They looked at each other, a human and an Arthaxian working together to sabotage the ship. The implications were huge. We need to see who it is, Sarah said, pulling out a fiber optic camera she'd modified. But if they spot us, then we will deal with it. Krithak's voice was firm. You have taught me that sometimes protocols must be broken. Now I will teach you something. When stealth fails, direct action becomes necessary. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding as she slipped the camera under the door. The image on her screen made her gasp. Krithak, she whispered. That's Lieutenant Weber. And, isn't that your superior, Commander Texerin? Krithak's antennae went rigid with shock. It seems, he said grimly, that our investigation has become much more complicated. What do we do now? Now. Krithak's mandibles set in a determined line. Now we do things your way. We improvise. Sarah couldn't help but smile, despite the danger. They'd come a long way from their first awkward days as roommates. She just hoped they'd live long enough to appreciate the irony. Sarah and Krithak never got the chance to confront the saboteurs. The ship's emergency alarm blared to life, followed by violent shaking that threw them both against the corridor wall. All hands, brace for impact. The captain's voice echoed through the ship. Massive spatial anomaly detected. Through the nearest viewport, Sarah saw it, a swirling vortex of purple and black energy, far larger than the ship. The asterisk unyielding dawn asterisk was being pulled toward it. Engineering to Chen. Chief Vixtel's voice crackled over her comm. Get down here now. Krithak steadied her with one of his 4 arms. Go, I must get to the bridge. Wait. Sarah grabbed his arm. The saboteurs. We'll have to wait. Ship survival takes priority. They split up, running in opposite directions. Sarah made it to engineering just as another wave of energy hit the ship. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Shield harmonics are failing. Someone shouted. Structural integrity at 60%. Chief Vixtel's compound eyes reflected the chaos of emergency lights. Chen, standard procedures are failing. The anomaly is unlike anything in our database. Sarah rushed to her station, scanning the readings. The anomaly was producing waves of energy that ignored both human and Arthaxian shield configurations. Her comm crackled. Engineering, this is Commander Krithak. Our weapons have no effect. Traditional Arthaxian defensive patterns are useless. Same here, Sarah reported, watching another set of shield harmonics fail. Nothing in human protocols is working either. Then she noticed something odd. Each time they tried a human shield configuration, the anomaly's energy shifted one way. When they tried Arthaxian shields, it shifted another. Krithak, she called over the comm. Remember how the nanobots changed patterns when we combined our scanning methods? There was a pause filled with static. You suggest we combine shield technologies. That would violate about 50 different protocols, yes. Another shake rocked the ship. But if we alternate human and Arthaxian shield frequencies in a random pattern, while maintaining both power configurations, Krithak continued, we might be able to establish a stable field. Sarah finished. But I'll need access to tactical controls from here. Absolutely not. Chief Vixtel clicked. That would bypass all safety interlocks. Do it, Krithak interrupted. Engineer Chen has my authorization. Sarah's fingers flew across her console as Krithak transferred tactical control. She began programming a randomized sequence of human and Arthaxian shield configurations. Ready on the bridge, Krithak reported. Beginning Arthaxian power cycling. Initiating human harmonic variations, Sarah responded. On my mark. Now. The ship's shields flickered, then stabilized in a completely new pattern. The next wave of anomaly energy hit them and bounced off. It's working. Sarah checked the readings. The anomaly can't adjust to the random frequency changes. Maintaining power balance, Krithak reported. His voice stayed professional, but Sarah could hear the hint of excitement in it. Bridge, plot us a course out of here. The unyielding dawn turned slowly, its new hybrid shields holding steady. As they moved away from the anomaly, Sarah noticed something on her readings. Krithak, are you seeing this? The anomaly, it's artificial. These energy patterns are too regular to be natural. Agreed. And the timing with our saboteurs is no coincidence, Sarah finished. She lowered her voice. Someone wanted to test how we'd handle this. And now they know we can work together, Krithak added grimly. Once they were safely away, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. They'd survived, but something told her this was just the beginning. When she returned to their quarters hours later, she found Krithak waiting. It seems, he said carefully, that there are advantages to breaking certain protocols. Sarah smiled tiredly. And advantages to having some protocols, too. I couldn't have done this alone. No, Krithak agreed, his antennae moving in what she now recognized as concern. And I fear that soon we will need to combine our methods again. The real storm is still coming. Looking at the determination in his alien features, Sarah knew he was right. But for the first time, she wasn't worried about facing it alone. Sarah woke to the sound of Krithak's voice. Do not move. Do not open your eyes. Years of engineering work had taught her to listen to warnings. She stayed still, keeping her breathing even. Our quarters have been searched, Krithak continued quietly. They were careful, but they missed the sensor web you installed last week. Sarah almost smiled. After the anomaly incident, they'd turned their shared quarters into a fortress of combined human and Arthaxian security measures. How many? She whispered. 2 teams. 1 human, 1 Arthaxian. They waited until my morning meditation time, when I am usually in the temple chamber. But you skipped meditation today, Sarah realized. Because we were expecting something like this. Indeed. Krithak moved closer to her bunk. They were particularly interested in your workstation. Sarah's eyes flew open. The evidence. Last night, they'd finally decoded the nanobot control signatures. The data proved that Lieutenant Weber and Commander Texrin were working for a secret organization called Purity Front, a group dedicated to keeping human and Arthaxian societies separate. The evidence is safe, Krithak assured her. I moved it to the last place they would look. Sarah sat up slowly. Where? Krithak's mandibles clicked in amusement. Your cable drawer. No self-respecting Arthaxian would ever touch such chaos. A knock at their door interrupted Sarah's laugh. Chief Vixtel's voice came through the comm. Engineer Chen, Commander Krithak, your presence is requested in the captain's office. Immediately. They shared a look. This was it. They'll try to separate us, Sarah said as they walked to the turbolift. Standard intimidation tactic. Then we must ensure they fail. Krithak's antennae twitched. Remember your meditation training. Stay calm, no matter what they say. The captain's office was crowded. Lieutenant Weber and Commander Texrin stood on either side of the captain's desk, along with Chief Vixtel and 2 security teams, 1 human, 1 Arthaxian. Engineer Chen. Weber stepped forward, his smile too friendly. We've received some concerning reports about your recent activities. Unauthorized access to tactical systems, tampering with shield protocols, all of which saved this ship during the anomaly, Sarah pointed out. An anomaly that you have falsely claimed was artificial. Texrin clicked sharply. This, along with your ridiculous accusations against senior officers, suggests mental strain. Perhaps the integration program was too ambitious. We have separate facilities that would be more appropriate for each of you, Weber added smoothly. Krithak moved slightly closer to Sarah. You mean isolation facilities, where we cannot share what we have discovered about the Purity Front. Sarah pulled out a data chip, not the real evidence, but a convincing copy, about how you engineered this whole crisis. Weber's friendly smile vanished. Texrin's antennae went rigid with anger. The integration program is an abomination. Texrin spat. It weakens both our species. Really? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, it made us stronger. Strong enough to spot your sabotage, survive your artificial anomaly. And she smiled, strong enough to broadcast this entire conversation to the ship's main communication system. Weber's face went pale. Krithak raised all 4 arms, revealing the hidden transmitters in his armor. And the real evidence, Krithak added, has already been sent to both Coalition Command and the Arthaxian High Council. The captain, who had been surprisingly quiet, finally stood, as has my own investigation's findings. Security teams arrest Lieutenant Weber and Commander Texrin for treason and attempted murder. As the conspirators were led away, Sarah felt Krithak's gentle tap on her shoulder, their private signal for well done. There will be more like them, he said quietly. Those who fear change, fear cooperation. Sarah nodded. Then we'll keep showing them they're wrong, one broken protocol at a time. The captain cleared his throat. About those broken protocols, I believe we need to discuss updating some of our regulations, perhaps with input from our most innovative crew members. Sarah and Krithak shared a look. They'd succeeded, but more importantly, they'd proved something vital. Sometimes the best traditions were the new ones you made together. 3 months after the Purity Front incident, Sarah stood in the doorway of her quarters. No, their quarters, and smiled at the changes. The room had become something entirely new, just like the partnership it represented. Krithak's weapons still hung on his wall, but now they were arranged around a joint achievement board displaying both their commendations. Sarah's tools were still scattered across her workbench, but they were organized using a hybrid system of human practicality and Arthaxian precision. You are admiring our modifications again, Krithak said, coming up behind her. All 4 of his arms were full of training materials. Hard not to, Sarah replied, especially since we're about to have company. Their quarters had become the unofficial model for the Coalition's new integration program. Today, they were receiving their first group of students, 4 human engineers and 4 Arthaxian warriors, all assigned to learn from what the crew now called the experiment. Did you set up the demonstration stations? Krithak asked, setting down the materials. Of course. Sarah gestured to 8 workstations, each equipped with both human and Arthaxian technology. Though I still think starting them with meditation is a bit much. And I think beginning with random improvisation is risky. Krithak's mandibles clicked in amusement, which is why we compromise. The door chimed. Their students had arrived. The 4 humans entered first, looking nervous but excited. The 4 Arthaxians followed, their antennae rigid with formal politeness. Both groups automatically separated to different sides of the room. Welcome, Krithak said formally. You are here because... A ship-wide alert interrupted him. Sarah checked her console and grinned. Right on schedule, she said. Krithak. He nodded. Your first lesson begins now. This is a Level 3 engineering crisis simulation. You have 10 minutes to prevent a cascade failure in the ship's power grid. The students looked at each other uncertainly. Well, Sarah raised an eyebrow. Are you going to work separately and fail, or together and succeed? After a moment's hesitation, a young human engineer stepped forward. I'm good with power systems, she said. One of the Arthaxian warriors clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. I have studied emergency protocols extensively. Slowly, the groups began to mix, moving to the workstations in pairs. Sarah and Krithak watched as their students started working together, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. They learned faster than we did, Krithak observed. They have better teachers, Sarah replied. Computer, end simulation. The alert lights faded. Their students looked up in confusion. The real lesson, Krithak explained, was not about engineering or protocols. It was about trust. The kind of trust that lets an Arthaxian warrior meditate while a human engineer works nearby. Sarah added, or lets a human trust an Arthaxian's judgment in a crisis. The kind of trust, Krithak finished, that turns strangers into partners. As if to prove their point, the ship's communication system activated. Bridge to Commander Krithak and Engineer Chen. We're picking up unusual readings from the sector ahead. Your unique perspective would be appreciated. Sarah gathered her toolkit while Krithak checked his armor. They moved in perfect sync, a dance they'd practiced countless times. Class dismissed. Sarah told their students, tomorrow, we'll show you how to really break some protocols. After teaching you which ones must never be broken, Krithak added firmly. As they headed for the bridge, Sarah noticed their students watching them with growing understanding. The humans and Arthaxians were standing closer together now, barriers already beginning to fade. You know, she said to Krithak, when they assigned us to share quarters, I thought it was the worst mistake ever. As did I, Krithak agreed. I have never been so pleased to be wrong. Sarah laughed. Got that in writing. The great Krithak admitting he was wrong. Do not push your luck, Engineer Chen. But his antennae were twitching with amusement, and as they entered the bridge together, Sarah knew they'd built something special. Not just a partnership, but a blueprint for the future. Sometimes the best traditions really were the ones you made together. One broken protocol, one shared joke, one crisis at a time.